Have you ever suspected that this world is not what it seems?
Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain?
Something strange?
Something extraordinary?
If not, do you wish you had?
Do you long to experience that which lies beyond the bounds of the mundane world?
Hidden somewhere just beyond the limits of our senses.
If so, then join us as we take you on a journey
That blurs the lines between the normal and the paranormal. Welcome to Paranormalcy. The afterlife. Every culture in the history of the world has had their own ideas about what happens after we die. Well, we can all agree that our lifeless physical bodies remain, but is there an ephemeral part of our personalities that persists? If so, can it be measured or recorded in some way? Where is it that this part of ourselves goes to, if it exists? The previous several episodes have given us some insight into possible answers to these questions. The unconscious world of lucid dreams suggests that part of us can travel to other worlds and even view the future or alternative lifetimes. Through deep trance and even the memories of young children, we can access historically verifiable data of lives we lived prior to this incarnation. Through genuine mediumship from trusted family and those under rigorous scientific scrutiny, we've seen that there's a whole soul society waiting for us on the other side. From ancient indigenous traditions to modern-day religions, the one thing they can all agree upon is that we go somewhere. Just what the real us is a topic that I have my own theories on that we'll touch upon in a later episode. For now, let us turn our attention from the what to the where. Many religions ask us to do good works, to live a good life, and have faith that we continue after death in some form. Many would be surprised to know that there have been genuine, serious studies done trying to uncover the nature of this hidden realm just beyond the veil. Most people have at least heard of the light beyond the tunnel, as is common in those who have had near-death experiences. Some are even aware of strange happenings in and around areas that deal with death all of the time. Ask any nurse, doctor, or hospice worker and they will tell you stories about the uncanny things people say and experience upon death's door. Moments of lucidity, loved ones appearing to be seen by the nearly deceased, profound last words, and other such events are common when witnessing death as it occurs. All of these things merely give us clues, however. There is more there to be uncovered. There are those that would argue that the brain releases chemicals to produce these experiences. And while this is undoubtedly true, one must ask oneself how genuine their emotions and feelings are to them, as they are all merely chemicals too. Perhaps there is more here than just sophisticated yet mundane biochemistry at work. Perhaps brain chemistry itself is just one part of the greater puzzle, a sort of mechanism that bridges the gap between the body and what we call the soul.
I had read about out-of-body experiences hundreds of times, and somewhere in the back of my mind I knew that was what I was experiencing. I knew that far away my body had lost consciousness, and I knew that myself, as this consciousness, was somewhere else. In this place I had a body. I don't know what it looked like, but I know that it had eyes because I refused to open them. I know that I was laying on a hard surface, not cold or uncomfortable, and I knew that I was in a small circular room which was completely dark, but there was an archway nearby which was up a short staircase, and beyond this archway there was so much light that it appeared to be completely white. This small room was full of people who were speaking in many different languages, and I knew that these people were ancestors of mine. Amongst them, there was somebody larger. Whether this was a physically larger person or just an extremely important person, I'm not sure, but I recognized their voice and it seemed to eclipse all of the other people in the room. This person was calling me by my name repeatedly and appeared to be communicating with me from inside of my mind. I knew that it wanted me to open my eyes, but I declined several times because I thought that if I did, I would have to stay there. I abruptly awoke in my own body. This experience scored a 20 on Bruce Grayson's near-death experience scale, which we will discuss later. The first historical mentions of things that appear to be near-death experiences come from the 6th century AD, published under Pope Gregory the Great. In his dialogues, the Pope mentioned several people who had encountered shining angels, glimpsed hell, and come back with personalities changed. In the 1990s, Dr. Melvin Morse identified 9 traits that characterized an NDE. 1. An awareness of being at or near death. 2. A feeling of being at peace or being detached from the world. 3. A sense of being detached from one's body or even seeing one's body from an outside perspective. 4. A tunnel experience. 5. Beings of light or people who appear to glow. 6. A godlike being or presence. 7. A life review. 8. Reluctance to return to the world of the living. And 9. A personality change after the fact. Limited cross-cultural studies have been done on experiencers of NDEs, and while there are individual or cultural differences in interpretation, especially centered around the godlike being or seeing stereotypical hellish or heaven-like landscapes, people generally have the same core experiences. In his 1992 Psychology Today article, Bright Lights, Big Mystery, James Morrow writes that many who report their NDEs find it difficult to put into words. Quote, that forces them to borrow images from personal experience and apply them to their NDE. The similarities across a wide variety of cultures, ages, and religions support the idea that being near death not only triggers a specific type of experience, but that the experience is transcendental, that there is entry into another dimension of being. Dr. Bruce Grayson even developed a near-death experience scale, which was published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease in 1983. It is, quote, found to have high internal consistency, split half reliability, and test-retest reliability, was highly correlated with Ring's weighted core experience index, and differentiated those who unequivocally claimed to have had NDEs from those with qualified or questionable claims. This reliable, valid, and easily administered scale is clinically useful in differentiating NDEs from organic brain syndromes and non-specific stress responses, and it can standardize further research into mechanisms and effects of NDEs. The test consists of 16 questions rated by experiencers on a scale of 0 to 2. The average non-experiencer scores under 4. Scores of 5 to 7 are considered subtle NDEs. 8 to 21 are considered deep NDEs, and 22 to 32 are considered profound. Several studies have been done, one of which showed that about 9% of their sample experienced an NDE, and a small percentage of patients even reported being able to recall specific things that occurred or words that were said while they were in cardiac arrest. Several psychological models have been presented to explain this phenomenon, including depersonalization or dissociation brought on by the trauma and stress of being in an inescapable, life-threatening situation, hallucinations made up by the brain in order to soothe the dying psyche, or simply people expecting to have an NDE because they're familiar with the concept. But the experiences do not align with depersonalization or dissociation. The description of NDEs has not changed since the term was first coined in the 1970s. More easily available information hasn't changed them at all, and children's descriptions of their NDEs do not differ drastically from adults despite not having easy access to the same information. The self-soothing brain is an interesting idea, but visual hallucinations do not work the way that they do in movies. These would be unusually detailed and vivid hallucinations, and if that was the case, why would people be having these extraordinary hallucinations of the same exact thing? If schizophrenic hallucinations are affected by the culture of the experiencer, why aren't NDEs? In fact, let's delve more deeply into that. Hallucination is defined as a combination of 2 conscious states, brain wakefulness and REM sleep. The brain is generating dreamlike imagery. One of the characteristics of hallucination is the belief that whatever strange thing the experiencer is seeing is really physically there in front of them, just like in a dream. You never think about how strange it is until you wake up. Compare this description to the experience of an NDE, where the experiencer is aware of what has happened to them, aware of actual events that they couldn't have observed with their earthly body, knows how and by what means they have come to this new place. They describe the similar type of people even. That sounds less like a hallucination and more like a journey. My question is, where's everyone going?
When I was young and questioning my own religious upbringing, there were certain concepts that I found I had a difficult time accepting. My main concern was the fire and brimstone aspects of my Catholic upbringing. I just couldn't accept the existence of this place we call hell. To put it bluntly, I couldn't understand why God, a perfect being, would create imperfect beings, us, and then damn them eternally for containing the flaws He created within them. Part of me knew deep down that there was another place that we go, a place that we all go, and one that we call our true home. Intuition just wasn't enough though, so I started searching for answers. And when I did, I found that I wasn't alone in my thinking. Except those that shared these ideas came upon them not through intuition or some guided meditation, but unearthed from the depths of the unconscious minds of several patients through a deep hypnotic trance. While many skeptics decry hypnosis as a technique that can create false memories, the reality is that many subjects in these studies actually corrected the therapists when they were misinterpreting what was being conveyed. Any skilled hypnotherapist looking to uncover buried memory will know well not to ask leading questions, and even ask control questions when appropriate. The works of Dr. Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon are among the body of work that I've read on this subject. While both studied in the art of procuring past life memories from their patients, they too have developed methods of inducing a trance so deep as to enable their subjects to access memories of life in between lives. For me, the thing that solidifies the validity of their work is the similarity of experiences conveyed by subjects who had no prior contact with each other or prior knowledge of the work being done. In addition, the work that they are both doing and have done is for the benefit of their patients. While uncovering trauma from past lives can help in relieving psychological issues as well as chronic pain, delving into life in the spirit world can have an added benefit for those who need the guidance that these experiences provide. But just what is this afterlife like? What do we see there? What do we do? What is our role there? The answers to these questions seem to be universal among those who have been lucky enough to see and recall their experiences. Those of you with religious affiliations might find their faith tested or reject these ideas outright. And if this is the case, then feel free to believe what you wish. My goal isn't to destroy anyone's belief, but to enhance them using something more than just faith in scripture. With all the religions in the world, the idea that one is the true one seems to be rather unlikely. If there is truth to be found, I believe that it exists within the center of a Venn diagram composed of all religion, science, and esoteric knowledge. For those who are uneasy about the idea of hell, I'm happy to say that those who witness their life in the spirit world claim that there just simply isn't one. Rather, there is only one spirit home, and it's a place that we indeed all go. To accept this idea raises a lot of serious questions, and these questions don't have easy answers. However, the answers presented, once fully integrated into one's life, can have profound and transformative effects. To understand the context a bit better, we have to look at just what we are, not as humans, but what we really are as souls. Here on Earth, we are merely mortals. Our lives have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the spirit world, however, we are eternal, or rather, we live on a continuum of experience that far exceeds one small mortal life. There is no pain, there is no suffering, there is no grief nor sorrow there. Love, acceptance, and mutual understanding is the very fabric of the spirit world. The oneness and deep connection we all share permeates every aspect of life there. Communication happens between minds, therefore there's no secrets and there are no lies. The first step in trying to understand Earth and the horrors that sometimes exist here, one has to fully grasp what it means to exist as a spirit on the spirit plane. What could an eternal being living a perfect existence want? How would such a being progress? What would such an entity do to enrich themselves, to entertain themselves, to better themselves? The simple answer is this: only through a finite, imperfect existence can our eternal selves grow. For those wondering why there is pain and suffering on Earth, it is because pain and suffering are a catalyst for growth. Not only that, but things like love, peace, cooperation, and all the good things in life are all made sweeter by the contrast. Think of it this way: would we know light without shadow? Would we know warmth without cold? We may think of these things as a dichotomy. However, the truth is that there is no such thing as darkness, only the absence of light. And there is no such thing as cold, simply the absence of warmth. So too, here is the earth, the shadow to the light of the spirit world. Another burning question that immediately comes up with these revelations is, well, what about all the bad people? What about people like Hitler? While hard to grasp, the answer is much the same. It is impossible to know just how much good can come from a terrible situation. Difficult times tend to bring out the best in people, and while the atrocities of the worst of us take prominence and dominate our minds, seldom do we see new life and incredible beauty that springs up in the aftermath. Like a forest fire gives way for new growth, so too does the suffering on Earth. Now, I certainly don't endorse any amount of violence or suffering, not at all. All I'm simply saying is that it gives us the opportunity to steel ourselves, much the way that a sword is tempered through fire. And think of how dull things would quickly become if it were peaceful all the time. We tend to be victims of our own success in that regard. To quote G. Michael Hopf, "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And so the cycle repeats." But what of hell, you might wonder? What kind of punishment would we face for our crimes? Surely those who perpetrate these atrocities deserve to burn in some eternal fire. Well, what if I told you that they don't? Imagine this. Your true nature is an eternal being of peace, love, and light. You've incarnated upon this earth and had a rough time of it, so much so that you've done some pretty horrible things. Perhaps you've stolen, you've raped, even murdered another human being. How would you feel upon returning to your eternal home, realizing what you truly are, and even meeting the very souls of those that you've wronged in this life? The truth of the matter is that the only judgment we face after we die is our own. And that, you may find, is the worst punishment of all.
What strikes me as strange about all of these experiences is that these people are going to the same place, a place that has similar characteristics and similar inhabitants. While researching for this episode, I found that it was reminding me of the Revelation of John. In the beginning of Revelation, we see that John is in a deep religious trance and spiritual exaltation, and he's approached by an angel. Revelation 4:1 and 2, quote, "Then as I looked, I saw a door standing open in the sky, and the same voice I had heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this.' And instantly I was in spirit." So he has left his body, and instantly, in verses 3 and 4, he sees a being that is as brilliant as the gemstones jasper and carnelian, so brilliant, green, and red, with a glowing rainbow which is emerald-like in appearance above its head. This being is identified as God, the one who lives forever and ever, and is worshipped by the beings dressed in white robes that sit all around him. And as they show him what's to come, John becomes aware of disasters that will strike the earth. Very specific disasters with very specific outcomes. He sees Chimera, and he foretells the end of days, the beast and the ending of every life on earth, the judgment and the kingdom of heaven. He describes this kingdom in Revelation 21, starting in verse 15. Quote, "Its length and width and height are each 1,400 miles. Quote, the walls were 216 feet high. Quote, the wall was made of jasper and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. The foundations of the city's wall are decorated with every kind of precious stone, jasper, sapphire, agate, emerald, onyx, carnelian, chrysolite, beryl, topaz, chrysoprase, jacinth, and amethyst. The 12 gates are made of 12 pearls, each gate from a single pearl, and the main street was pure gold, as clear as glass. Quote, the city has no need for sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city and the Lamb is its light. Quote, its gates will never be closed at the end of the day because there is no night there. But doesn't this just sound like an NDE? John is very clear that he sees all of this while he is in spirit, separated from his body, not through dying, but through ecstatic religious trance. We do not see what happens to John after he sees the kingdom of heaven, so we can't consider requirements 8 or 9, but omitting those, he still meets 5 of the 7 requirements of an NDE. I rated this on the clinical NDE scale, and even without information that John doesn't include, like his account of being sent back voluntarily or involuntarily, whether or not he had a feeling of being at peace and oneness with the universe, etc., it still scored a 19, a deep NDE nearly to the level of profound. He clearly went somewhere, to an actual place that he was able to describe down to the paving stones. When was the last time you had a dream that you could describe with 22 chapters of detail? On their website, the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment wrote of the late psychic, Quote, later in life, Casey would find that he had the ability to put himself into a sleep-like state by lying down on a couch, closing his eyes, and folding his hands over his stomach. In this state of relaxation and meditation, he was able to place his mind in contact with all of time and space, the universal consciousness known as the superconscious mind. From there, he claimed to be able to access the Akashic records and God's own book of life. I have to admit that I discovered the wisdom of the most documented psychic of the 20th century only very recently, so imagine my shock upon discovering that his technique for mediumship is identical to the one that I've been using for over 10 years. And when I do it, I find myself in a library. I do not practice mediumship in the same way that Edgar Casey did. I don't think anybody does. But I have been interested in astral projection and exploration for quite some time. My initial attempts at this were kind of clumsy, but I became pretty skilled at it, and I was able to go to some really interesting places. I've drawn some of these places and things that I've seen, and I'm going to include them in the video for your consideration. One of the most striking things that I've noticed is that there are almost no inhabitants when I go to these places. They change as though inhabitants or other visitors were there, and sometimes I think that I can feel that someone is there, but I'm nearly always alone. One of my most explored places is a basilica with a mosaic on the floor and an oculus and a dome that is sometimes covered in shallow water and sometimes open to the sky. Through the basilica, I can gain access to a library with a fireplace and a large spiraling staircase that leads down. Above the staircase is another dome with an oculus through which I can sometimes see beings watching me. Down the staircase there are older shelves of books, a resting chamber, and a chamber full of statues with a long dining room table in it. Every time I go there, I get more information or I see something different, but these aren't features that I come up with, nor do a lot of them make sense to me. Why those places? I don't have anybody that I can ask, so I simply keep exploring and hope that the answers become apparent to me. There are stranger places that I don't really know how to put on paper, and there are places that are entirely mundane but are strongly associated with physical feelings or emotions that I can't express because you simply can't draw a feeling. Something that stuck out in my mind while I was reading about the skull experiment for the last episode was that the spirit team had a very difficult time explaining the spirit world and methods of communication in a way that human beings would fully understand. One of the hallmarks of an NDE is being able to know more about the universe, being able to mentally perceive and understand more. I believe the difficulty in translation in lucid dreams and astral projection is one we've explored before. We're using our brains as the primary processor for these experiences because it's our only option. But when we remove the brain from the equation, as with an NDE, we are left with only our mind as the processor, and that seems to work far better.
Once we can start to accept some of the basic things about life in the spirit world, we can really start to grasp life on Earth. Beyond just the philosophical implications of such an existence, our curiosity demands that we know more about this place, our eternal home. I'll put links in the description to a few of Dr. Newton and Dolores' works so you can take a deeper dive if you wish, but I will summarize it here, because if you're anything like me, you want to know every single detail. There are different places and phases we enter when we pass from our mortal life. The immediate feeling one gets upon being released from their body depends on the circumstances. It can be jarring and confusing for those who die suddenly and violently, oftentimes causing them to linger as ghosts for a time, as we've learned. For those who have lived a long life or have lived many lives and are used to death, it is often a liberating experience. It has been described as taking off muddy, heavy clothes after an incredibly difficult day at work. Like the reports of near-death experiences, there is often a tunnel with a light at the end of it. The soul, as is the entirety of the spirit world, is not a physical place, and life as a non-physical entity in a non-physical space is very different, although there is still much that will be familiar. While we are made to forget upon entering our new body, returning to our natural state causes us to remember, some immediately and some after a bit of acclimation. Those who have lived many lives make the transition more easily, while those who aren't as experienced need a bit of adjustment. Fortunately, the spirit world is an organized place populated by many highly skilled souls, whose jobs mainly include assisting others in one way or another. There is no judgment, since all recognize each other as part of the same divine source with the same goal of perfecting themselves, learning and growing. Across the span of many lives, we've all made mistakes. We've all been victim and victimizer, sinner and saint. The main focus is to improve and to get it right the next time. Like Shakespeare once said, all the world is a stage, and we are merely players upon it. Being that the spirit world isn't a physical space, it tends to appear differently to people based upon how they wish to see it. What is agreed upon is just how absolutely beautiful it is. Not only that, but it's universally accepted that different places have distinct purposes and all are immediately recognized by those who experience them. Not only does the scenery appear different, so too do souls appear different to one another. Like the essence of a place, the essence of individual souls is instantly recognizable to one another. Appearing as luminous beings at our core, we can choose to don any appearance we like, much as we would wear a costume or a set of clothes. Often we choose to appear as a favorite incarnation, a life we are particularly proud of, and wear it like a favorite suit. Despite this, we can still recognize each other, because there are senses there that are more than just sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. There's a deep knowing, one that permeates every experience that we have, and every one we meet, and every place we go. As for locations and their purpose, they mainly tend to follow the function of incarnation and study. There is a place where we arrive after we come back from life on Earth that is meant to acclimate us. There, we are met by guides, teachers, and friends. For those who have dealt with a traumatic end, there are more intensive therapies available. Every soul has an advanced entity responsible for them, a being that acts as a teacher and guide through our incarnations. Eventually, we are brought before a council of what many call elder souls in order to examine the life we've just lived. While this may sound intimidating, one must understand that there is no judgment, only love, encouragement, and understanding here. As previously stated, the only judgment here in this scenario is self-imposed. Once reviewing our last incarnation is complete, we rejoin with our soul group. Much as we have a group of friends here in life, so too do we have them in the afterlife. These groups are comprised of souls of a similar aptitude and disposition. Each group then studies within their own school of sorts. It is in these schools that we examine the lives we've lived, the lessons we've learned, and begin planning for what to do the next time around. We are free, of course, to spend time relaxing and having much-deserved leisure time. Time doesn't flow there in the same way it does on Earth. How exactly this works is hard to explain. Many claim that moments on Earth can seem like years on the other side. Others still say that souls can see through time the way we see through space. I still struggle with this concept, yet the understanding I get is that we don't necessarily have to view time as linear from that point of view. It is possible that we don't live our lives in chronological order, so much so as in an order that makes sense for our own personal development. This could be one reason why we are made to forget upon coming here. Truthfully, there are many reasons we forget. For one thing, we wouldn't want to be here on Earth knowing how wonderful our eternal home is. Not only that, but we wouldn't be ready to learn the lessons we need in order to grow. Only in forgetting who we truly are can we learn new things about ourselves, things we normally wouldn't. There is a lot of preparation for coming back to Earth. Those that I know in this life profess that they simply don't want to come back here again. There are times that I wholeheartedly agree with this sentiment. However, the perspective from the other side of things will most likely change our minds. There is a striving for perfection as a soul, one that seems to dominate the focus of what happens over there. One may be wondering where God is in all of this. What is universally understood and reported by witnesses is that God isn't so much an entity but a force, one that permeates everything. You can feel the loving presence of wisdom, acceptance, love, and understanding. One could say that the energy that we call God comprises all of creation, and the spirit world is so close that you can feel it around you all the time. The progression of perfection that we all strive for as souls moves us closer and closer to that energy, that light, that source of creation. People who recall spirit life through hypnosis do not even fully grasp this power, yet they can feel it. Many have speculated, and I agree, that once a soul gets that far, we have the choice to remain one with the source of creation and eventually be reborn, much like a new life on Earth, forgetting everything we know and starting the process all over again. Thus is the source of creation continually sending out fragments of itself for them to discover who they are and eventually rejoin the unity. Microcosms and macrocosms, as above, so below. I find the elegance of this idea appealing, which is why I personally believe it. What you believe is up to you. I'm simply here to report what I've learned for those who are eager to understand, like I was.
The nature of the spiritual realm was something that fractured my relationship with classic Christianity really early on. I just couldn't reconcile the imperfect nature of humanity with the rigidity of Christian dogma, and it was something that I struggled with for a long time. I tried to be a part of this religion for years after I stopped believing, and it was only when my guides told me that there was nothing for me within the church that I left and started seeking answers for myself. I found it comforting to believe that the afterlife was a comforting and warm and loving place, and not the more negative and anxiety-ridden experience that I had been led to believe. It meant unconditional love, being with my true family, and an eternity of learning and creativity. And the model of NDEs that we've been discussing upholds this idea. Overwhelmingly, the messages that we get are of love and the spiritual family coming to greet us with open arms. While the life review is a classic staple, there are plenty of people who have been shown future events and warned about the trajectory that mankind is on. The inhabitants of the spiritual world care about us, and they care about our future, and there are, according to the Skull Group, thousands of groups of spirits that are attempting to make contact with us from the other side at this very moment. We may not be able to fully comprehend the spirit world itself or spirit communication, but communication and perhaps even visitation between our plane and theirs is fully possible, and we're working our way towards it. Someday, it may even be as simple as a phone call.
So, with this, we've come full circle on our series about the mysteries of the mind, the body, and the soul. There is certainly way more to tell on these topics. Yet, there are many more mysteries that abound right here on planet Earth. Not only ones that can't be seen, but those that crowd the very skies above. In our next episode, we'll change gears and cover a topic that has fascinated me, personally, from a very young age. And indeed, it's a topic that has recently started to come into focus in the mainstream. We used to be laughed at for believing, and now it seems there are videos from skilled pilots and studies being done by the Pentagon, top-level officials admitting all of this. The topic I'm alluding to, of course, is that of UFOs.
Paranormalcy is produced and co-written by Matthew McLarisi and Sarah O'Shea. We produce our own music and our own art. To support our work, please visit our website in the link below where you can contribute to our crowdfunding, purchase the Paranormalcy book, and enjoy our art and music. We encourage you to reach out to us and share your own paranormal experiences. Our email address can be found on our website and in the link below. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.